you doing, Sam? It's great to be in person. Like we've done so much communication over Zoom, over phone, over email, but we're actually like sitting face to face, and
it's the real thing.
So the title of the exhibition is Money, and that's a very interesting title. And so I'm just curious, what inspired you to tackle that theme throughout this exhibition?
I was looking back and the sort of imagery I'd been appropriating, sort of collecting, sort of starting to compose, and I'm sort of wondering what the thread was between all the subject matter. It was money. It's, something literal, like a stock exchange. I'm wondering about the architecture of that space, how it impacts the exchange of money, but also just athletes, musicians, how they interact with it. So this, who's generous with money, who's creating money, who's not. It was ever present. I find in my midlife, I constantly thinking about money, for as crass as it seems. I could be talking with my parents, I could be talking with artists, and we're going to talk mortgage rates at some point during the day. That's weird. That's sort of but I think that's just because that's where I am in life, and that's where it's in the zeitgeist. So money is the thread that connects all these sort of diverse subject matters that I've brought together here.
I kind of want to switch gears to some of your aesthetic leanings and what you were doing with how this series is kind of an outgrowth of your Combine series.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about your process of creating these works?
The way it starts is, like I said, the drawing. So I draw on one end, I draw, I guess it even starts before the drawing, collaging these works. I'm grabbing images, I'm printing them out, I'm playing with scale, I'm working with composition, I'm worried about this thing. The tenets of the eye movement, something as simple as composition are important. So I work with that, and I redraw that, knowing sort of what's going to stay sort of on the surface, what you're going to see, and what's going to be the cutout on the back. So I'm working on both sides of the paper. Draw with pencil, draw with ink, erase the pencil, flip it over, sort of stencil out where there's a void. Oftentimes it's areas that are backgrounds of the appropriate imagery, so it falls. It's natural. It sort of works organically. On that side, I do a line drawing. It's all the subject matter is all the lines are real. They're all part of real stuff. It's not squiggles. It's not random. It's things that I'm thinking about. It's a very quick creative process, which is important because the overall process is really slow and quite repetitive. So having that moment of really intense creative creation is important. So then I flip back over, I paint it, I establish my pattern, establish the palette, kind of work with that. A lot of it is planned, and there's always moments of surprise, things that I didn't expect to do in there. A color that's working really well, something like that, something that I realize needs to shift, and then flip it back over once that's done, and cut around all my lines. And so these two separate processes are existing on one piece of paper, like one object that will be seen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of potential for error in there, and I really like that idea of basically not fucking it up at the end. There's so much work that goes into it. That, if at the end my blade runs, the whole thing is gone.
Yeah.
That's just sort of it. And so in that way, it's sort of like a personal challenge, just to make sure I can do it, make sure I'm executing sort of like where I think I should be doing it.
One thing about Nigerians that people may not specifically know is specifically the Igbo tribe within Nigeria, they're known as like the money tribe.
Okay.
They're like the people. They're like the tribe that's all about like they're just very focused on money. A lot of them are wealthy. A lot of them are in the government.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of the role that they play within Nigerian culture. And also it's like and also on a larger scope in terms of like billionaires, right? There are a lot of Igbo billionaires. There are a lot of Nigerian billionaires, and so for me, it's like there's this narrative of money and wealth, and it's almost like and this is how I viewed it, like through seeing the Benin Mask as part of the narrative, this tapestry that you were creating, that and as me as a curator that we're co-creating, I saw like it almost including like that type of idea of wealth into this conversation as well, and so I'm just curious if you could talk about like specifically how you tracked wealth, but not specifically only. I mean, you did track it from the Western perspective. Obviously, you have the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, but you were playing with many different cultural influences.
Yeah, I mean, the Western perspective is my perspective, so I can't. It's not. It is the perspective I have, and it's the perspective I was raised in, but I like to think I'm aware of it and sort of can be, see the limitations of a single perspective as sort of that might be the dominant, certainly in my life, doesn't mean it's the only one. And to the Igbo Benin bronzes specifically, like it's present in the news now. Germany is repatriating 3 masks, and I love that conversation. This idea of stolen artifacts from a place being brought home, and sort of the minutiae and bureaucracy surrounding that. How do you value it? Where's it going to go? Who's declaring that value? I mean, literally, where those type of things I find fascinating. And so, I heard about it first in an Economist report. The fact that I read about it in the Economist magazine, I love that it was, not in our news or something like that. Sure, it's in our news, but that wasn't where I was hearing it. And so, I'm sitting here sort of creating the subject matter, and the economist, listening to the Economist, and they're talking about these Benin bronzes. I'm like, oh, I love the Benin bronzes. And so then I'm like, oh, okay, that's it. That's the thing. It's the thread is on point. And then the fact that they're beautiful objects, that's it's easy to work with. It's easy to recontextualize it because it's an object that I want to see and engage with and recreate. Anything I put in there in my work, the subject matter, I'm the act of redrawing it. I'm studying it. I draw it with pencil, draw it with pen, I go over every inch of it with paintbrush. It's a thing that I choose subject matter that I find interesting, that I find that has an inherent beauty to it. So like that for me, it's a way of sort of honoring is a bit of a sort of superlative, too much of a superlative. It's like it's me saying like this is in my head, this is valuable. And that's how the masks showed up there.
And this is like an off-the-cuff question.
Sure.
So the Mets, you had the Mets mask out there, and right now, like obviously, I don't really follow baseball that much, but I do know that right now, like the Mets were like it just, to me, it was interesting that in our flyer, it was the Mets mascot, but then like in sports, the Mets were like having their moment almost also at the same time. And I'm just curious if that's something you were thinking about.
I love sports. I'm always interested in sort of like how the economics of a thing work, and so it made sense that when I'm sort of using sports imagery, that the Mets would. Mr. Met is also just like it's great image. This team that I grew up sort of loving because they weren't good is good. I could love because they weren't good. Threat to my Braves. And I'm like, oh boy, now they're both good. This is so interesting.